Good evening, and thank you for joining us live here from the Hawaii Theater Center. I'm Dave Moss, here with Iggy and a very special guest. You're joining us for our Tuning Up program here at 7:30 in advance of our HPR broadcast over on HPR2. We're coming to you from the past currently. Today is August 25th. Just a few hours ago, we received the notification from the state that we'd be returning to a stay-at-home order, and we quickly moved to record these broadcasts so that we can continue these conversations on Tuesday evening. I hope where you are, things are much better than they are here today, and really appreciate your support for tuning in. Thank you. So, I'm here with Iggy, and I'm going to turn it over to Iggy to introduce our guest for the evening.
That's right. We have the incomparable Randy Wong, the president of the Hawaii Youth Symphony, and also a very esteemed bass player. Randy, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Iggy, thank you very much. And Dave, just a big congratulations for coming out to Hawaii. Great start with the Hawaii Symphony. And Iggy, a big congratulations to you for an incredible performance.
To the orchestra.
And to the orchestra for a great performance here in Hawaii Theater a few weeks ago.
That's right.
It was nice to be back on stage.
We were a few months idling, practicing on our own, teaching, but just to see all the colleagues and making music together with a bit of a distance felt sort of a renaissance, kind of a very refreshing and very moving to share music together. So today, as Dave said, there was an announcement of another lockdown, but hopefully things will get better. And that's why we're wearing the same clothes that maybe you saw 2 weeks ago. It's not because we don't wash our clothes, it's just because it's the same day. Sorry, I diverged.
Well, we thought about creating some sort of bubble here, just kind of taking up residence at the Hawaii Theater Center. One of our tremendous partners here who has allowed us to come in and do these live streams and has continued the mission of providing entertainment to this community and music and all of these live events that we just can't wait to get back to at the moment. So thanks to the Hawaii Theater Center. I promise we're not putting our bunk beds up in the balcony quite yet. But if this goes on much longer, it might resort to that. So,
Dave, I just wanted to ask you, before you came to Hawaii, there was a reputation about Randy.
Oh, no.
And you had heard a lot about Randy for a long time before you came here.
I had. And, I had heard so much about not just Randy, but the tremendous program that he runs at the Hawaii Youth Symphony. But there was this running joke, and we had a couple of mutual friends, a shout out to Ann Lanzalotti, who hopefully is tuning in on the East Coast for this. But it was always this joke of, I think there's a saying, 1 degree of separation from Kevin Bacon. But when it came to Hawaii and when it came to especially classical music, it was one separation from Randy Wong. So I was just so pleased to meet Randy back in February when I came for the announcement. And since my wife and I have been here since March, both Randy and his wife Helen have just opened their arms to us and welcomed us to this community in such a meaningful way during these challenging circumstances. So it's just thrilling to be in the same room with you and to have these conversations and to be a partner as the Youth Symphony and the Symphony go forward together here. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dave. And it's just a great pleasure to have this amazing partnership.
So we find ourselves amidst a pandemic. How has the Youth Symphony changed?
Well, obviously we, like other arts organizations, it's a difficult time. There's a certain magic and an expectation to being in a youth orchestra, to be in the same room with 100 other young musicians playing music, putting your heart and soul into the repertoire. And so, honestly, it is very different. But one thing that hasn't changed is the Hawaii Youth Symphony's mission, which is to develop youth to their fullest potential through orchestral music. And what we really believe in is the opportunity that music provides to bring kids together, to give them something that's out of this world. Just there's that spark that you get from playing an instrument that is unlike anything else, you know? And we want every child to have that spark. We believe, we have a vision to make music a right and not a privilege. You see, there's close to 200,000 kids in the state of Hawaii. And by and large, most of those kids don't have music in their lives, especially in the elementary school levels. And so we just think if you have an opportunity to hold a violin, strum an ukulele, play a recorder, maybe responsibly with a mask, or just begin to have this general lifelong appreciation for music, there's nothing that our kids can't do. Yeah. And so we have kids that they've started in our very beginning programs. We have a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. They can start for $25 a year, play an instrument. They can work their way all the way up, through our solo and string quartet programs, through our jazz program, our summer festival, the Pacific Music Institute, all the way up to our top Youth Symphony 1 full orchestra. And they can have a life in music. And whether or not they become a musician, whether or not they continue to play music in college, or maybe they just enjoy, classical concerts on Hawaii Public Radio, they have that opportunity. And so we just want to give them that opportunity.
And there's so many values they can learn through the Youth Symphony. I was telling you the other day, I was surprised because when I've been to other places on the mainland, there's a Youth Symphony, but usually the Youth Symphony has one orchestra. The Hawaii Youth Symphony range is so big. There's not one, there's not two. There's a lot more that started, I think, with Henry Miyamura. Tell us about how big the range is.
Well, we just celebrated our 55th anniversary. We were founded in 1964 as a project of the Honolulu JCs. And the Honolulu Junior Chamber of Commerce, they just believed that music should be in every child's life. And so we had just had one orchestra. It was conducted by Peter Mesrobian, who was the director at Punahou School at the time. And the idea was just to bring kids together, from like Punahou, Iolani, and Kalani, maybe Roosevelt High School. And over time, what became self-evident was that music is really just such a big part of this culture and this community that so many kids wanted to sign up. So it went from one orchestra to two. It was a youth symphony orchestra and a junior orchestra, actually conducted by Harold Higa, who was in the Honolulu Symphony. And then it went from two orchestras to four, and then to six. And before we knew it, there were 7 orchestras. And Maestro Miyamura, who was our music director for 33 years, he really helped to develop that pipeline. And then upon his retirement in 2017, we began to grow even further. We thought about expanding the base so that there could be more kids who can have that opportunity, and finding ways to serve kids of other instruments and other styles. So that's where we got the jazz program, the solo and string quartet program, expanding our summer festival, all that sort of thing. And now, we are one of the largest youth symphony orchestra programs in the country, right up there with Chicago Youth Symphony.
Sure.
Big shout out to our friend, our mutual friend, Susie Lape. Quad City Symphony Youth Symphony.
Yep.
There's tons of great youth orchestra programs that are all connected. I mean, we're even connected, through the League of American Orchestras.
Absolutely.
Dave, you told us that you went to Juilliard as a viola player.
I
but
did.
Tell us about your youth symphony days.
I did. I had a wonderful youth orchestra experience. I was part of Midwest Young Artist in Chicago, run by Dr. Dennis, who's been someone who's been in my life literally all 30 some odd years. And the program there was unique in that it turned out some phenomenal players. And as you mentioned with the Hawaii Youth Symphony, it's also about just training people for life, and that learning an instrument and sitting in a room with 4 people and playing a quartet, and the type of skills that takes. Negotiation, for example. Are we gonna follow the violist?
Yes, always.
Yeah, always. Yeah, absolutely.
Except if you got the concert manager.
Yeah. Or and then the large orchestra setting where I think there's so many relationships to business experience, and as a conductor, following a conductor, and knowing when to lead and knowing when to follow, and all of those sorts of things that I think are really evident in training musicians at an early age and through high school. And I have good friends from that program in Chicago that have gone on, and they're tremendously successful doctors and lawyers, and music is still something they appreciate, and they support their local arts organizations, and they support their youth symphony and all those things. So it's really, the youth orchestra experience is very unique, and it's so important to our community. And I think what's unique here is, in Chicago, I had friends that I drove an hour every Saturday to go to youth orchestra, but here your reach is not just on Oahu, but the other islands, right?
Yes, we do have students that come from the neighbor islands. We love our neighbor island students. There's some really tremendous band programs and private string programs that are spread all across the state, and so we're lucky. We've had students who have they come to HYS. We have a scholarship program that reimburses travel and brings down the cost of tuition and private lessons. I know many neighbor island students come to take private lessons from HSO musicians.
Yeah, case in point, one of my students who was now in college would fly from Maui and take a lesson from me and go to rehearsal with the Youth Symphony afterwards. And that was because of the scholarship he got through the Youth Symphony. And, it's interesting that sometimes, some kids who know they were going to go into music, they go into music, but sometimes they don't know. They go to college for science or whatever, and other teachers in the same college music department, they hear them play. And regarding that specific student I was teaching, he didn't go into music at first, but then they heard him play, and so now he's a full-time music major in college on the mainland. So that is quite magnificent.
That's incredible. I mean, on the flip side, what I hear often is when we're talking to alumni, and they say, I didn't end up going into music, and I didn't really end up playing in my college orchestra, but I found out what it meant to be passionate through my experience in the youth symphony or, in the music community growing up. And I was able to transfer that into, and then you find someone who became, an astronomer or, who went into medicine, or he just became a really great, chef or something. It's just like they were able to transfer that passion. And I think that to me is enlightening.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know during this pandemic, it's been a challenge because you haven't been able to rehearse together, but you've been very creative. I taught a student of mine this morning, and I asked her, so what did you do with the Youth Symphony this past Sunday since you were at home? And she said, it was a lot of fun because we learned about music notation, and it was like music coding.
Yes.
So
yes.
It was a jargon that I don't understand myself, but but I mean, it was a very positive experience on Sunday. Instead of having a rehearsal with the orchestra, she learned a lot about music and software and all the stuff that I'll never understand myself.
Yeah, no, I think what you're talking about, we have this. So we have this online learning platform we just launched, actually in concert with HSO, as you know. It's called HYS Plus, and it's a weekly online program where kids, all across from Hawaii, but really everywhere, can participate. They do these activities where they develop themselves individually as musicians. They get master classes from Hawaii Symphony musicians, but they also participate in like these interdisciplinary projects. So this one that you're talking about is called Music Plus Code, and it's a program with this amazing organization out of Malden, Massachusetts, of all places. And the fellow who runs it, this guy Devin Ulibari, worked in the MIT Media Lab. He was on faculty at New England Conservatory, which I'm an alma mater. And they developed this computer coding thing where you learn about music theory and sound engineering and software programming. And so they partner with Google for the Google Summer of Code and all this other stuff. And it's just a great way for us to kind of develop the kids in a different way that's still related to music, but in, kind of accessing a different part of their brains. And we don't know. I mean, most of our kids aren't going to become musicians, but they are going to have an opportunity to develop themselves through music.
Is registration still open? I think you have two people who might be signing up for that. Yeah,
absolutely. You know what? We would love it. Yeah.
Well, that might be what Iggy and I are doing during the next 2 weeks here during this lockdown. Is getting on board with that. It's really awesome. Congratulations on a successful launch. pivot into the digital world. And yeah, it's just great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, you mentioned about passionate players just a moment ago. Tonight's violinist is very passionate, and it's very interesting because you went to school with her, and so instead of you asking me how was it to share the stage with
Sure.
a conductor or soloist, I'd like to ask you, Bella Hristova, who is our featured violinist for the evening. She has been here before, so we really loved having her. I think the first time she might have played Barber Violin Concerto. Anyway, tonight she's playing David Ludwig's Violin Concerto along with Joanne Ferrara on the podium. Tell us about Bella.
So I know Bella just very briefly from some time at the New York String Orchestra seminar. It's a really, I hope it's still going on with all that's happening in the world right now. But it was this wonderful time between Christmas and New Year's where there's this intensive led by Jamie Laredo. And it was a string orchestra with some winds, and it culminated in performances at Carnegie Hall. And Bella was the soloist one of the years that I was there. And that's how I first got to know her. But what's so interesting about this concerto is that it's written by her husband. Her husband is David Ludwig. And I had a chance to take a little taste of the concerto with a pre-recording here that you'll all be hearing on HPR2 here in just about 13 minutes. And it's a really wonderful piece, and there's just this interesting narrative behind it. It's an ode to their marriage. It references partnership, empathy, and communion as imagined before, during, and after a traditional wedding ceremony. And I think I have a lot of questions there. My wife's an optometrist, but I'm going to turn this over because both of the gentlemen to my right here are both also married to musicians. So has there ever been a composition that you've written for your wives? What is it like to share the practice
if I said
room?
No, I would get in trouble. Okay? The truth is,
David has set the bar high, hasn't he? Yeah.
so are you asking, how is it? It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. No, seriously, I think there's some affinities.
Yeah.
You can communicate without really talking about it, some understanding. Now, sometimes we do share the stage. So when you have professional artists who have to have a stage life, I guess, the truth is sometimes what, Randy?
Sometimes it's wonderful, and other times it's just mind-blowingly incredible.
So why am I laughing like that? No, so sometimes it takes work. So I know in my case, it's my wife who has to be understanding because I'm the impatient one, and so she's kind of the wiser one of the two. Some things for me are automatic, and not to blame the French or the hot-tempered Koreans, but sometimes you could argue that both in Korea, where am I going, and in France, you can be kind of hot-tempered and go like,
What is I'm going to turn this another direction. What is your wife's a pianist, right? Chris?
Yes, she went to Juilliard like yourself. She studied with Ellen Masaki here and went to Juilliard, lived in New York and came back.
Do you have a favorite sonata that you guys play together?
She loves Brahms.
Yeah.
Yes, she does.
Beautiful.
So we've actually played, I think, the third one.
Yeah.
But we also play little shorter pieces. Sentimentals. We have we like everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what about you, Randy?
My wife and I have performed together a lot, actually. We have an exotica band inspired by Martin Denny and Arthur Lyman. So we play together in that, and I did compose. I wouldn't call it a concerto really, but it is kind of a short violin showpiece for her that we performed, and I think she definitely performed it better than I wrote it. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about the concerto a little bit? I have my notes. You had the notes, but actually, Randy, you kind of
I have not any notes.
said about that.
You played it though.
I did play.
We performed that. It was so. I think what was it? A few weeks ago, there was a work that we performed. That was sort of a new work. Oh yes, it was the Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
Oh
Danny,
yeah,
11.
Sandy Cameron.
So there's there are a lot of works we know we could play in our sleep, and there's some works that are new to us. So that was David Ludwig's violin concerto, and it was what I remember is both of them, Bella and David, have roots in Eastern Europe, either Jewish or Slavic. I'm not quite sure, but some Bulgarian rhythms, and I think one of the dances is called a crooked dance, and so it wasn't like a basic 4/4, but 5/8 maybe.
Yes.
It took us a little while to adjust, but we did manage after 2 rehearsals. But it's a very colorful work, and just to see her, wonderful player, kind of maneuver and singing beautifully through her violin and with such ease, and it was sort of amazing to watch. Of course, we had to focus on the music as well, but it's a great experience. And as we are performers, and it's very important to kind of help those who create music, the composers, to sustain the art.
Absolutely.
It was so thrilling to be on stage, as part of that work. And she just had, you could just tell that music meant so much to her personally. And so, like, for us as an orchestra, learning these different 5/8 grooves and everything, it just helped the music to really come to life. It just what a great experience.
It is, and it was a program centered around Eastern European composers. Georges Enescu opened the program, and then David Ludwig, who is American, of course, but some roots in Eastern Europe. And I believe the last piece of the evening was Dvorak number 8. That was before Dvorak came to the U.S. to teach in New York, and settled in Iowa or something. So I believe the number 8 has some catchy tunes anchored in Bohemian folk tunes, but I believe it also has some good tunes for the bass.
Yeah, in the last movement, a lot of times the bass, we have very boring kind of tutti parts, but there's a really great set of bass melodies, and I hadn't really had a chance to play the Dvorak 8 in a professional orchestra, but I did get to play it in Mr. Miyamoto's Youth Symphony 1 way back when. So it was nice to kind of revisit it at Blaisdell.
And back to the Youth Symphony. Now Henry Miyamura retired a few years ago, and now a special shout out to
yes, a special shout out to Maestro Joe Stepek and his entire conducting team.
That's quite a team that you have.
Quite a team. Yeah, there's about 12 different folks that are on our artistic team: conductors, instructors, jazz teachers, and so forth.
Well, Dave, I hope you get to meet all the kids of the Youth Symphony. It's wonderful.
I hope so too. I think we have such a unique opportunity here to have a partnership with the Youth Symphony, and it makes us a better organization, I think, to be able to really see who we serve, and to see the future of classical music in the hundreds of, if not thousands of kids that cross through the doors of Hawaii Youth Symphony every year. So it's really, we have such an opportunity and an obligation, I think, as the symphony orchestra here to pass that on. So appreciate the partnership there. Dvorak, New World, that's kind of his, why doesn't the 8 stand up to the 9? With every composer, not just Dvorak.
I think maybe because the 8, or you mean the number 9?
Well, I mean, the 8th Symphony versus the 9th Symphony. We can go through every composer, but let's start with Dvorak.
Maybe because, it's a very beautiful work, but maybe it's more intimate, and it's not as... The New World is
right. Well,
the wide expanse. You think of the U.S.
It's programmatic.
Yeah.
The 9th is programmatic. Many 9ths are, right? Or they at least have a subtitle.
Yeah.
The 8th is the 8th. It's major.
That's true.
It's less complicated.
Yeah. And is it just a bridge to the ninth?
Yeah.
Is Dvorak just jotting this down so that he can get to the Ninth Symphony? And
But he was a very good viola player. Maybe you would know
Was
the
he?
answer. I believe so. Or I know when he was in his youth, he was chopping. He was a butcher's son, I believe.
okay,
Yes.
and he lost a few digits.
And then he became a viola player.
Oh, I see. That must be French humor.
No, but truthfully, the eighth is probably after the ninth his most well-known symphony.
Absolutely. Well, four.
Four is very good.
Four is very good. Yeah, absolutely. Will there be more Dvorak in our future?
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, of course, the cello concerto, which I think, yeah.
I believe that's on the docket for February.
Yeah. So
a young cellist, Sterling Elliott, a Sphinx winner, is joining us in February, or maybe it's January.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's January. It's really exciting to have Sterling join us, and Samir Patel is the conductor for that,
right.
and that is scheduled to be our first performance of the 2021 season. It'll actually be the 21 season at that point, and we're expecting to work together with the community to be at a place where we can return to some semblance of live performance. And if that's not the case, it'll come to you through this streaming capability here. So, and I think that's our first performance here at the Hawaii Theater Center with the orchestra this year as well. So we look forward to packing this place as well as physical distancing it allows for us in January. What are you looking forward to at the moment, Randy? I mean, this is a time where we're sometimes, things are dark.
Well, I think I'm looking forward to seeing how we can continue to find ways for music to connect us. This is, you're right, this is a dark time, and some may say, in a dystopian sense that it's, devoid of culture and connectivity and creativity, but I don't think so. I think it's really a very interesting time that our arts organizations, especially here in Hawaii, are going to find a way to pivot, to keep the connection going, to find ways, because music is a healing force, right? There's so many different ways that, music helps us to, take our mind off of difficult things. It helps us rejuvenate.
Feeds the soul.
Yeah. Warms our hearts, and we'll see a lot of creative people out there, and a lot of great opportunities to do some really, really good. So, really good.
Yeah. And of course, with the Youth Symphony, when you see the kids of the Youth Symphony, you feel like our future is in good hands. Just to see them, like you said, they can play music and then they can do other things. That's why I think when you're a teacher, I think teachers don't really age because they see the kids, and every year, it's just so comforting to see them every day. And so I know I take comfort myself in seeing them try their hardest and go through this pandemic, but they're just they're not perturbed too much, and they just keep going at it.
Well, we're really fortunate for all the great teachers out there, both private teachers and school directors and symphony musicians and other musicians who really help to inspire our kids. Because if it wasn't for having great performing ensembles like the Hawaii Symphony, our kids would have much less to look up to, and so we're very, very thankful.
Well, we appreciate it. These partnerships, these supports that we all rely on each other during these challenging times, and in the good times, it makes our community better. So, and one of those partnerships is obviously Hawaii Public Radio. And in just about 90 seconds here, we will all tune our radio dial over to HPR2. And enjoy tonight's performance of Enescu Ludwig and a little Dvorak. So we want to thank you for all of your support of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra and the Hawaii Youth Symphony and the Hawaii Theater Center. I would especially like to thank our Masterwork sponsor, the Halakulani, our friends at Hound and Quail, who provide us with this radio week after week.
Nice.
Go support your local stores through this. Today we saw the posting from them. Remember, this is August 25th here, that they'd be shutting their doors for 2 weeks. So we need to do everything we can to support these local businesses so that they're here on the other end of this. A special thanks to Greg Dunn here at the Hawaii Theater Center and all the supporters around this place. And a special thanks to Donard Sonoda of 808 Video Productions for all his support in making this possible. So, Iggy, where do we go?
We go to HPR2 to listen over the air, or we can stream the performance via the HPR app or at hawaiipublicradio.org.
Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you very soon.